This is another New Black World Order TV Productions. Chopper. What's happening, family? Grand Rising. Today I want to talk about racism, right, versus rudeness. I want to talk about the struggle of African Americans with the police, the bus driver, and the merchant, right? I want to talk about rudeness versus racism. I want to talk about being treated with some respect. All right? So, there are many other facets in which white supremacy, systematic racism affect us, but I chose just these three ones, right? The police, bus driver, transportation, we know about Rosa Parks, right? Police, we know about historically with them. We're talking about merchants. We know about the sit-ins at the restaurants. We know about the merchants of real estate, slumlords, and we know about redlining. We know about government contracts being awarded to the dominant white society, right? And so we want to be treated with some respect. We want to be treated with equality in these areas. And I want to talk about these areas because racism existed in the police department, it existed in transportation, and it existed in the business world, right? But isn't racism rudeness? And can you have racism without rudeness? So I was thinking about this, and particularly about Rosa Parks and the transportation, as far as busing in the inner cities throughout America. Rosa Parks ushered in, right, change in the transportation department. Today we see a many African-American bus drivers. But I want to, start off right there with Rosa Parks as we go into what we're talking about. Racism versus rudeness, being treated with some respect. So let's unpack this shit right here. So before the Rosa Parks incidents, white bus drivers was allowed to exert racism on black riders, and that racism was expressed in many different ways or varieties of rudeness. Is it so? And so once we fought for equality in transportation, we saw them start to remove the race thing, they say, right? And they started to remove white bus drivers, penalizing, replacing them with black bus drivers. And a lot of things changed. But I got one thing to ask. We're in 2020. What's up with the respect level? Now that you have many black bus drivers, and that racist bus driver that opposed Rosa Parks that day, he was a very, very rude motherfucker. And I'm pretty sure he was rude to black people long before he even ran into Rosa Parks. Pretty sure he was rude to Rosa Parks long before he even asked her to give up her seat. So we got a problem with rudeness, and we got a problem with racism running hand in hand, because you can't have racism without having rudeness. Racism is a toxic form of rudeness, isn't it? But we're talking about 2020. A lot has changed, but a lot hasn't changed in the way of respect. Now, the first group of black bus drivers that came in after this Rosa Parks incident, they took pride in what they were doing. They knew why they were there. And they sought to eliminate racism in the bus driver's seat. The first person that encounters the city as it moves about in the day-to-day operation. Then they wanted to remove that rudeness. So they were exemplifying excellence, and they brought a more kinder spirit, because attitudes are contagious, to the city. But we're in 2020 today. I want to ask you a question, black folks. Is rudeness still driving the bus, or is racism still driving the bus? We know that racism is particularly still driving the police department. We know that racism still exists in a high form in the merchants area. But what about this area, transportation? Okay, you'll say that certain routes are cut out and certain routes are added in because of race. But nobody addresses rudeness. So, the great labor union that was protecting the bus driver in the incident with Rosa Parks, they stood up for its racism, but they also stood up for its what? Its rudeness. So I'm asking you today, do you meet or encounter some of the rudest motherfucking black bus drivers you ever met in your life? I said in your individual life. So you mean to tell me the racism is gone, you got a black bus driver, but the rudeness is potent as ever? But I want to be treated with some respect because I'm a customer, right? I'm a customer to the bus driver, I'm a customer to the merchant, and I'm a person that's supposed to be served by the police. The police is full of racism when it comes to those issues that we have identified. And most definitely, if it ain't racism, it's a whole lot of goddamn rudeness going on. Well, is racism the foundation of rudeness, or is rudeness the foundation of racism? So I want to ask you a question. So if the rudeness is there, and the rudeness is making the black bus driver bad, and the rudeness made that white bus driver bad, should we just be attacking racism? Should we also be attacking rudeness? But you have a great lobbying union that protects racism and rudeness in the police department. And goddamn it if they're protecting it in the bus driver department. Because some of the bus drivers that black people had the experience before Rosa Parks were some of the rudest motherfuckers you could ever see. And we have some black bus drivers today that are just as nasty. So we want to be treated with some respect in these three areas: police department, transportation, and business. Racism versus rudeness. They both got to go. We cannot allow black rudeness while attacking white racism. Now, when I spend my money, because money is green, I don't give a fuck. Listen, man, if you got a business or you operating a service and you are getting paid for it, I think you ought to treat somebody with respect. And if you learn how to eliminate rudeness, you probably cut the legs off of this. But we like to try to cover this up, right? And act like it's not there, and then pretend like the rudeness not there. We got to deal with it. So I tell people all the time, I don't care if you got a lemonade stand, I don't care if you got you selling candy apples, I don't care if you the bud man, I don't care what you is. You got to treat your customers with some respect because they're paying for your product or your service. I don't care what color you is. I don't care if it's a white police officer, black police officer, white bus driver, black bus driver, white merchant, black merchant. You got to respect your customers. Businesses do not survive. They hemorrhage because of racism. They hemorrhage because of rudeness. What the fuck are we doing then? If we're going to allow rudeness to still exist in the police department and racism, we're going to allow rudeness to still exist in this bus driver seat and in the business district. What's going on with y'all? That's right. I'm going to take my time to come into your black establishment. Then I deserve to be treated with some respect.